The future is the ultimate unknown. There's no more coveted knowledge than what's going to happen. But isn't prediction impossible? The only thing certain is uncertainty. The weather can only be predicted so well. Human behavior, no less unpredictable. Does this field introduce a question of credibility by virtue of calling itself predictive analytics? That's a credibility question that I'll address partway through my presentation. I'm going to introduce predictive analytics, describe how it drives value across business applications, across industry sectors, by way of what I refer to as the prediction effect, which is that a little prediction goes a long way. Then I'll take a look under the hood, a bit about how predictive models work, especially in terms of what I call the data effect, which is that data is always predictive. And then I'll touch upon an advanced topic, which is optimizing for persuasion or influence with regard to operations such as marketing analytically. So, how many people here know or have heard of Nate Silver? Yes. Many, okay. There's no more famous person of prediction in the United States, no better known prognostic quant than former New York Times blogger and political poll aggregator, Nate Silver, who correctly predicted at the 2012 US presidential elections the outcome for each of the 50 US states. So people ask, is that predictive analytics? Does that count? Did Nate Silver use predictive analytics? Actually, the answer is no, but Obama did. And this is a perfect way to exemplify the difference between forecasting and predictive analytics. What Nate Silver did is forecasting. For an individual state, like Ohio, he created a forecast of the overall trend across voters for the state. Would the state go more towards the candidate Obama or the competing candidate Republican Romney? Red is for Republican and blue is for Democrat. Whereas the Obama campaign analytics team actually rendered a predictive score for each individual voter. Now, you may imagine or assume initially that what they predicted about the voters was the voting behavior, the outcome. Would they vote Democrat, Obama, or red, Romney? In fact, what the Obama campaign did was more advanced, a particular form of predictive analytics called persuasion modeling, where they're predicting for each one, will this voter be influenced by way of campaign activity, such as a volunteer knocking on the door or making a phone call, and similarly to target direct mail. Is this a good door to knock on, or should we not spend our time there and go and knock on this door instead? That targeting of marketing, and a presidential campaign is selling a presidential candidate, it's a marketing campaign. Very much the same concepts apply for driving, rather than voting behavior, driving commercial buying behavior. This is what we want to optimize for. So in a nutshell, while Nate Silver competed very publicly, and he was on all the talk shows in the US multiple times, late night talk shows, everything, he competed very publicly to win at forecasting the outcome of the election, whereas the Obama campaign analytics team competed very secretly to win the election itself. So which is more powerful? This speaks to the fact that predictive analytics empowers an organization not just to predict the future, but to influence it by virtue of that defining point, that it produces a prediction for each individual. And those millions of per individual predictions directly inform actions, treatment, outgoing behavior of the organization for each individual. So if we want to turn to defining what predictive analytics is, well, an informal definition is in the subtitle of my book, Predictive Analytics, the power to predict who will click, buy, lie, or die. So let me actually give you a quick elevator pitch. This book is conceptually complete introduction that's being used as an intro textbook at 15 universities. Extremely accessible, so any of your lay person uncles and aunts should hopefully be drawn into the thing. However, for those of you who are already experts, the last 3 chapters address advanced topics such as the persuasion topic I'm going to come to that are new to almost all even advanced expert practitioners. So let's turn to a little bit more precise definition of predictive analytics. It's technology that learns from experience, learns from experience. By experience, I mean data. So, data, maybe not with this crowd, but is often considered kind of a boring word, right? Data is a deal killer at cocktail parties. I know from personal experience. I have the data. But that's because you forget data is actually a long list of things that have happened. It's a recording and encoding of the collective or aggregate experience of your organization, from which it's then possible to learn from it how to render predictions for each individual. So each person gets a predictive score, a number. The higher the number, the higher expected chance that individual will click on a certain link, buy a product, respond to an offer, do something you don't want them to do, like cancel their subscription, commit an act of fraud, commit a crime, turn out to be a poor credit risk. Any kind of behavior for which there may be value for the organization to predict in order to drive all these decisions, these treatment, these outgoing actions. So in a nutshell, the technology at the center here takes the data in as input from the left. This is number crunching, pattern detection, or some kind of regression fitting a formula, which then comes out in the form of a predictive model that I depict in these slides as a golden egg. And it's the whole point of that thing, what's been learned, that golden egg, its job then is to produce the predictions. So this golden egg now takes as input one customer information, or whatever it's a customer, it could be a voter, it could be a healthcare patient, but the information about that individual, one at a time, and produces the predictive score. So for example, in marketing, you're looking at it as a customer on the left. If we expend the cost of contact for marketing, send them a brochure, what are the chances that tomorrow there'll be a positive outcome? They're going to buy the sneakers. So the credibility question. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Niels Bohr said that prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. And comedian Jay Leno, how come you never see a headline like "Psychic wins lottery"? Right? So there is this question when we go around claiming we predict stuff. It's very simple to establish credibility, though. The bottom line is really, really simple, straightforward. You actually don't need to predict accurately in order to drive great value. Predicting better than guessing is oftentimes more than sufficient when optimizing the performance, the actions, the outgoing treatments en masse over millions of organizational decisions and tweaking that numbers games that organizations play. And so let's make that a concrete with a back of the napkin arithmetic example in marketing. Let's say we're marketing to these 1 million customers. We're going to spend $2 to contact each one. So by mailing all of them, it's going to cost $2 million. If we assume there's a 1% positive response rate, that's 10,000 positive responses. Each of those make us $220. So 10,000 times 220, we got $2.2 million in after spending $2 million to contact everybody. So the bottom line profit is $0.2 million, $200,000. How much better would this marketing campaign get if we targeted with a predictive model? So we have a prior marketing campaign where we have contacted customers, some did and some didn't respond. That's experience from which to learn, analyzed, crunch on that, create the golden egg, use it to score all 1 million of these prospects, sort the list from highest to lowest, take the top quarter. So now you've got the top 25% predicted as most likely to respond if contacted. If now we target in that way, we suppress the other 75% of the list, so in that way we're driving these action decisions by way of the predictive scores. And we do the same arithmetic if we only were to market to that top quarter, right? Take the calculator, watch, same type of arithmetic, it skyrockets the bottom line profit by a factor more than 5 to $1.15 million, which is such a big deal. It's such a dramatic difference that I actually paid my graphic designer, who I pay by the hour, to make this explosion star thing to express myself, because I'm a robot, I don't have emotions. well, wait a minute. This model isn't good. It's not accurate. It's not telling me, like a crystal ball, this individual's definitely going to make a purchase. We don't have high confidence about any individual. It's a 3% response rate. 3 times average, a lot more than average, but still. So this model really stinks. But there's no denying its value, so we can call this a skunk with bling. That can be our new definition of predictive analytics. It's a skunk with bling. I call that the prediction effect. A little prediction goes a long way. Predicting better than guessing oftentimes is enough to drive and improve performance and value when optimizing en masse over many decisions in marketing and beyond. So before we talk about a bit under the hood of how the predictive model works, let's talk about what it is we actually need to predict, defining the predictive objective specifically. And to that end, one good model for marketing is actually dating. And conversely, actually, next time you're on a date, you can look to marketing analytically to help optimize your performance. Because this is you're not in the restaurant for food, right? It's a sales call, you're selling yourself, right? I'm a dating coach. So it's very important to predict ahead of time which outgoing treatment or message is going to lead to a positive outcome and which might lead to a negative outcome. So how many people here saw the movie Groundhog Day? Okay, most people. So Bill Murray here is stuck in the same day, supernaturally, living the same day over and over again. He's in his own personal hell. He can't get out. He hates it. Until he realizes that this provides for him the unprecedented superpower to test different marketing treatments on the same prospect under exactly the same circumstances to see which leads to a positive outcome. Let's watch a 40-second clip from the movie Groundhog Day.
You weren't in broadcasting and journalism?
Mm-mm. Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
What a waste of time. I mean, for someone else, that would be an incredible waste of time. It's so bold of you to choose that. It's incredible. You must be a very, very strong person. Yeah? You weren't in broadcasting or journalism, anything like that?
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
La fille qui j'aimerais sera comme bon vin, que c'est bon fuira un peu chaque matin.
You speak French.
Oui.
So the sad fact in life is there's no do-overs. So literally then the only recourse we have is to predict which treatment would lead to a positive outcome. But what is Bill Murray on the left here predicting? He's not just predicting the outcome. He's not just predicting the future, the behavior of the prospect. Will she fall in love with me? He's predicting which treatment, which action towards her will lead to the positive outcome. Will this treatment choice influence her? You actually predict influence to do influence in an advanced form of predictive analytics that I'm going to come back to. In general, you're just predicting the future. So let's look a little under the hood. And of course, naturally then, we turn to Kung Fu Panda. How many people here saw Kung Fu Panda? And how many people here saw Kung Fu Panda and don't have kids? Yeah. We should hang out. So the old wise turtle said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present, right? Well, let's take a slightly less clever, sentimental look at it. Pragmatically, what do we have today in the present that's a resource to help us predict this unknown? This thing on the right, nobody knows. It's impossible. It doesn't exist yet. But we have these two things in pocket that already do exist, that have the same relationship. Something that happened yesterday, we decided to contact this customer. We waited around, and then let's say earlier today we found out, yes, there was a positive outcome. They bought the product. These are both things in the past, nothing to predict, a learning example from which to analyze and learn and produce this golden egg, corresponding to one row of data. Everything on the dotted line was already known back when we would have liked to have predicted, such as the customer is male, lives in California, had made 10 purchases, etc. And then on the right is the thing, the outcome, the thing that you want to predict that we found out later. Now, this one row of data is one of many rows, obviously, in general, one row per individual, and getting your data into that form and format, which is called the training table, is the most arduous, time-consuming technical part of predictive analytics. It can't be automated because it depends on what your data looks like already. So doing that whole data manipulation thing, understanding the state of your data now and its meaning, and putting into that form where time is a defining element there, because we are talking about prediction, that's the most arduous. It's not the rocket science part where you're producing the egg, but that ends up being the bottleneck, technically the most time-consuming portion. And once you do, you can analyze it, and you start getting these insights, such as that at a retail store, customers who bought diapers were more likely than average to also buy beer on the same trip, often interpreted as daddy needs a beer. Your email address domain name, which is turned out to be so valuable for many different client projects. In this case, what are the chances that you'll be acquired as a paying customer on an online dating site? From 0.5% Hotmail up to 5 times that probability based just on this one factor. Earthlink is at the top here, 2.5%. That's a internet subscription service, so maybe it's their permanent email address. Canadian Tire issues credit cards and looks at how good a credit risk is this person? Are they going to pay their bills on time with respect to what they've actually purchased using the credit card? It turns out people who go to bars, have used at a drinking establishment, are worse credit risk, more likely to miss payments. But if you've been observed going to the dentist, maybe you got your stuff together, more conservative, whatever, you're going to be paying on time, less likely to miss payments. Similarly, you buy those little felt pads that go on the bottom of your chair, right? Very important, better credit risk. Go to the dentist and buy the felt pads. I call this the data effect. Data is always predictive. There's always something in there. That effort is worth it, getting into that form and format of the training data where you're juxtaposing something you knew at one point in the past right next to something that you then later found out later and you would in general like to be able to predict, and that juxtaposition of this incredibly valuable thing. You always find predictive patterns, correlations that help predict. Every data set's got some value. For all intents, you could probably come up with counterexamples, but for all intents and purposes, this is the excitement. Big data, the big is about excitement. And it's because data is experience from which it's possible to learn to predict. When you put the data together, multiple factors, the email address, did they buy diapers, all these things together, that's what the golden egg does. More precise predictions, and you get these great business results. These 3 examples in marketing. First Tennessee Bank in the US lowered direct mail costs 20%, improving the return on investment of the marketing campaign by a factor of 6. Large retailer Target improved direct mail by 15 to 20%, and Premier Bank Card, which is a major credit card issuer in the US, reduced mailing costs by $12 million. There's so many of these case studies, and in fact, what's happening across business, not just marketing, but outside of business, government, law enforcement, healthcare, political campaigns, et cetera, it's taking such a strong hold and has penetrated so deeply, at least in North America and Europe, and it's only gaining traction more and more worldwide. Predictive analytics has such a big influence on our lives as consumers. As you walk down the street in your normal daily life, our experience in modern society is dictated by how we're treated and served by all these different kinds of organizations. And they, in turn, more and more, are driving millions of decisions a day with predictive models in order to determine who to call, mail, approve, test, diagnose, warn, investigate, incarcerate, set up on a date, and medicate. So predictive analytics is definitely here to stay. It's only gaining traction more. It's such an important differentiator, one of the last remaining significant qualitative points of competitive advantage. Thank you for your time. Wait, no, stop. I've still got like 3 minutes left, and I have to touch upon this advanced topic, which for me is one of the most exciting things. It's this influence thing, this persuasion thing. Right? We talked a second ago about how we targeted marketing so effectively, had this higher response rate, and we're going to only expend the cost of contact to this segment. If all these people responded who are green, we're getting this really high, relatively speaking, response rate. How could we possibly cut costs and be more effective and efficient and targeted with our marketing? Well, there's this extremely surprisingly overlooked question in marketing all the time. Who of these green respondents may have actually purchased the product anyway? It could have been half. It could have been these purple ones. In certain cases, the product's kind of flying off the shelf. It's selling itself. We could have saved all that marketing cost if we had somehow predicted not only who's responding, but who's a sure thing. It's like that love song from the 60s. You didn't have to be so nice. I would have liked you anyway. You didn't have to buy me flowers. You didn't have to spend $2 on a marketing campaign. I was going to buy the product. Now, it turns out there's a similar plot twist with regard to the other main analytical application within marketing, which is targeting retention offers. So retention is so important in marketing. You can see your customer base as this balloon. So the new customers are always coming in from the left, like air flowing into the balloon. The attrition is that loss leaking out to the right. If you could just squeeze that nozzle a bit and hold those people who are leaving, at least some of them, in, decrease the attrition rate, how much more quickly would that balloon be expanding? That's the growth rate of your customer base. The thing is that to keep a customer who might otherwise leave around is a retention offer that can be very expensive. In telecommunications, maybe you have to offer an entire free phone. Not something you can afford to do to all your customers. So once again, prediction is the only recourse in order to more effectively target retention campaigns. You're trying to keep the customers around. Great, but that doesn't solve the problem, because it turns out there's another plot twist. There's this backlash, this inadvertent backfiring that can happen from a retention offer, like this one in telecommunications. The customer receives this brochure at home. She feels incarcerated with her current obligation to the cell phone provider, and this brochure reminds her, oh, my contract's up for renewal. Actually, I'm free to defect. The heck with your offer and your whole service, and this customer would otherwise have stayed around. It's a sleeping dog customer. We want to exercise the adage, let sleeping dogs lie. Don't trigger customers to leave who otherwise would stay. It turns out that very much the same exact thing demonstrably came up within the Obama campaign analytics team. Of course, we didn't get any of the story till the election was over, but they've been quite forthright with all the discoveries. There were plenty of voters where if you've knocked on the door as a campaign volunteer, you actually increase the chance the person would go over and vote for the opponent, which was Romney. These were sleeping dog voters. So this whole issue here isn't just predicting the future. Are they at risk of leaving? Will they respond if I contact them? It's predicting, will this treatment lead to a positive outcome? Is it likely to keep them to stay? Is it likely to get them to buy that they wouldn't have otherwise, but not annoy them? Is it likely to get them to vote for our political candidate? So the technology to do this is a very advanced thing. I can only touch upon it for 1 second now. I'll go into it a little bit more during my workshop tomorrow, and there's plenty of stuff online. It's called Uplift modeling, and the Obama campaign called it Persuasion modeling, which is an okay word, but it also applies to healthcare. You're not persuading a body to get better, but it's the same concept. It's about influence. You're predicting influence in order to enact influence. So we define it as modeling to predict the influence on a customer's buying behavior that results from the choice of the marketing treatment, from choosing this treatment option over the other one. So instead of predicting for each individual the outcome, the future, the behavior, what's going to happen, what are they going to do, are they going to get healthier, which is what you might first think of with prediction, in this more advanced form of predictive analytics, we try to predict how much more likely is this treatment to generate the desired outcome. So we're predicting influence of a marketing treatment in order to optimize the choice of marketing treatment. So it's a sort of, if you're new to predictive analytics, this is super duper advanced, because even people in the field for 10 years haven't even heard of this. But it's taken hold. There's lots of case studies now, more and more we're seeing, where it does make a big difference. For example, Telenor, a large cell phone company in Europe, based in Norway, showed that when they did head-to-head comparison of the standard best practice, use a predictive model, predict who's at risk of defection, and target the retention offer. That's the standard, that's the best practice prior champion method. And then the challenger was the same thing, but target with an uplift model. So, for example, they're going to avoid hitting those sleeping dogs and triggering customers who otherwise would stay. A huge win, especially in this case after phone number portability was introduced and people were more inclined, or it was easier for them to defect. 11-fold factor improvement on the return on investment, the win from the campaign when moving from one old-fashioned predictive analytics, in this case, to Uplift modeling. So I've discussed three main takeaways. The prediction effect is that across all these different business applications, there's so many places you can use predictive analytics. You can imagine so many different kinds of behavior to predict, so many different types of mass-scale operations to optimize by way of those predictions. And a little prediction goes a long way. Predicting better than guessing is oftentimes more than sufficient to have a dramatic improvement in overall effectiveness over millions of decisions. The data effect is, well, the great news is we can do that because data is always predictive. We're going to find these patterns, these trends, these correlations that help predict and enhance that golden egg, the predictive model. And then lastly, I touched upon this advanced topic, uplift modeling. You need to predict influence in order to more directly optimize for influence per se, for marketing applications, healthcare, any kind of decision where you're trying to make a difference and change a behavior and external outcome. Thank you for your time.